GhastlyGarlic Episode 42. Tales of the Forsaken, Ghosts from the Three Cursed Lands. First story, The Whispering Well. Prologue. In the heart of Mumbai's bustling Marham neighborhood lies the D'Souza Chawl, place steeped in whispers and shadows. The chawl is unremarkable by day, a crumbling relic of the past where life bustles on despite the decay. But by night, it transforms into something far more sinister, its narrow corridors and dimly lit corners echoing with the soft murmurs of the unknown. At the center of this dark tale is the old well, a forgotten relic that holds more than just water. It holds a secret that has lingered for decades, a secret that no one dares to speak of, except in hushed tones. Chapter 1, The Beginning of the End. The monsoon had just begun, drenching the city in a relentless downpour. The residents of D'Souza Chawl hurried through the narrow lanes, their feet splashing in muddy puddles as they made their way home. The smell of wet earth mixed with the scent of incense and spices, creating a heady aroma that lingered in the air. In one of the chawl's many cramped apartments, a young man named Anil sat by the window, staring out at the rain. He had recently moved to the chawl, taking up residence in a small, damp room on the third floor. Anil was an artist, drawn to the city's chaotic energy, but he had quickly grown weary of the chawl's oppressive atmosphere. The constant noise, the cramped living conditions, and the eerie silence that settled over the place at night had begun to take a toll on him. As he sat there, lost in thought, he noticed something strange. Through the sheets of rain, he could see a figure standing by the old well in the courtyard. The figure was shrouded in darkness, but he could make out the faint outline of a woman, her long hair hanging limp around her face. She was standing still, staring down into the well, as if searching for something. Anil felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard the stories about the well, how a woman had fallen into it years ago and drowned. The well had been abandoned ever since, left to rot and decay. But the stories didn't end there. People said that the woman's spirit still lingered, trapped in the well, waiting for someone to free her. He shook his head, trying to dismiss the thought. It was just a story, a silly superstition meant to scare children. But as he watched the figure by the well, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to it, something dark and twisted that lurked just beneath the surface. Chapter 2, The Descent. The next day, Anil couldn't stop thinking about the figure by the well. He asked around, but the residents of the chawl were tight-lipped, their faces growing pale at the mention of the well. "It's best not to talk about such things," an old woman warned him, her voice trembling with fear. Some things are better left alone. But Anil couldn't let it go. He was drawn to the well, to the mystery that surrounded it. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, he made his way down to the courtyard. The rain had stopped, leaving the air thick and humid. The well loomed before him, its stones slick with moss and age. As he approached, he felt a strange sensation, a prickling at the back of his neck, as if he was being watched. He looked around, but the courtyard was empty, the only sound the distant rumble of thunder. Anil took a deep breath and peered over the edge of the well. The darkness below was impenetrable, a yawning void that seemed to stretch on forever. Suddenly, he heard a whisper, soft and indistinct, like the rustling of leaves in the wind. It was coming from the well. Anil's heart raced as he leaned closer, trying to make out the words. But the whisper grew louder, more insistent, until it was all he could hear. It wasn't just one voice, it was many, a chorus of whispers that seemed to rise up from the depths of the well, swirling around him like a storm. He stumbled back, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The whispers followed him, echoing in his ears, filling his mind with a sense of dread. He knew then that the stories were true. The well was cursed, haunted by the spirit of the woman who had died there. And now, she was reaching out to him, trying to pull him down into the darkness. Chapter 3, The Unraveling. In the days that followed, Anil became increasingly obsessed with the well. He stopped painting, stopped eating, stopped sleeping. The whispers haunted him day and night, their voices growing louder, more urgent. They spoke of things he didn't understand, things that filled him with a cold, creeping terror. The residents of the chawl began to notice the change in him. He became a shadow of his former self, his eyes hollow and sunken, his skin pale and clammy. He would spend hours staring out the window, his gaze fixed on the well below. Some said he was losing his mind, others that he was being possessed by the spirit of the woman in the well. One night, unable to bear it any longer, Anil decided to confront the source of his torment. He made his way down to the courtyard, the air thick with the smell of decay. The well stood before him, a dark, gaping maw that seemed to beckon him closer. As he approached, the whispers grew louder, more frantic. They spoke of death, of despair, of things that had no place in the world of the living. But Anil was beyond fear now. He was consumed by a desperate need to know, to understand the darkness that lay at the heart of the well. He reached out and touched the edge of the well, the stone cold and slick beneath his fingers. The whispers rose to a fever pitch, a cacophony of voices that seemed to surround him, to envelop him in a suffocating embrace. And then, without warning, the ground gave way beneath him, and he was falling, tumbling down into the darkness. Epilogue: The endless night. Anil was never seen again. The residents of D'Souza Chawl whispered that he had been claimed by the spirit in the well, dragged down into the depths, where she had waited for so long. The well was sealed up soon after, the entrance covered with a heavy stone slab. But the whispers continued, echoing through the narrow corridors of the chawl, a constant reminder of the darkness that lay just beneath the surface. And at night, when the wind blew just right, you could still hear them, the whispers of the well, calling out to anyone who would listen, luring them closer to the edge, closer to the darkness. For the spirit of the woman in the well was not satisfied with just one soul. She was hungry for more, always hungry, always waiting. The residents of D'Souza Chawl learned to live with the whispers, to ignore them as best they could. But the fear never truly went away. It lingered in the shadows, in the silence of the night. A constant reminder that some things are better left buried, forgotten. But in the darkness of the well, nothing is ever truly forgotten. And so, the whispers continue, waiting for the next soul to wander too close, to listen, to fall. The story of Anil and the well became just another part of the Chawl's dark history. A tale whispered in the dead of night to scare the children. But for those who knew the truth, who had heard the whispers, it was a warning. For in D'Souza Chawl, the past is never truly dead, it lives on, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the next unsuspecting victim. End of The Whispering Well. Second story, The Crimson Curse. Prologue. In a remote Russian village, where winters are long and nights stretch endlessly, there existed a chilling legend passed down through generations. It was a tale whispered by firelight, a story that sent shivers down the spines of those who dared to listen. The legend spoke of a cursed apartment, an accursed place where death itself was said to reside, hiding within the walls, waiting for the right moment to strike. This is the story of the Crimson Curse, a tale of a family that moved into a new home, only to find themselves ensnared by a malevolent force, an entity that dwelled within the very walls of their new abode. The curse manifested as a red stain on the wall, a mark that would grow brighter with each life it claimed, until there was no one left to tell the tale. Chapter 1. A New Beginning. The Ivanov family had been searching for a new place to live, a fresh start after years of hardship. When they found the apartment in the village, it seemed perfect. A cozy, affordable home with just enough space for their small family. It was an old building, with creaky floors and drafty windows, but it had character, and they quickly fell in love with it. As they unpacked their belongings, they noticed something peculiar, a faint red stain on the wall of the living room. It was small, barely noticeable, and at first, they paid it no mind. They assumed it was just a mark left by the previous tenants, nothing more. But as the days passed, the stain seemed to grow, deepening in color, spreading like a blot of ink on parchment. They tried scrubbing it off, using every cleaner they could find, but the stain refused to budge. Frustrated, they decided to cover it with wallpaper, hoping to hide the unsightly blemish. That night, as they settled into their new home, a sense of unease began to creep into their hearts. The village was eerily quiet, the only sound the howling wind outside. The Ivanovs huddled together, trying to shake off the feeling, but the silence seemed to press in on them, heavy and oppressive. Chapter 2. The First Night. The first night in the new apartment was restless. The wind outside battered the windows, and strange creaks echoed through the old building. But it wasn't the wind or the creaks that kept the family awake. It was something else, something far more sinister. In the dead of night, as the family slept, the red stain began to glow faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. The air in the room grew thick, charged with an unseen energy. And then, from within the stain, a hand began to emerge. A ghostly, crimson hand that shimmered in the darkness. The hand floated silently through the room, its fingers outstretched, as if searching for something. It hovered over the father, Mikhail, for a moment, then without warning, it lunged, wrapping its cold fingers around his throat. Mikhail's eyes shot open, his breath caught in his throat as he tried to scream, but no sound came out. He thrashed wildly, his hands clawing at the air, but the hand's grip was unyielding. Within moments, it was over. Mikhail's body went limp, his lifeless eyes staring up at the ceiling, his face twisted in a final, silent scream. The hand released its grip and faded back into the stain on the wall, leaving behind a deathly silence. Chapter 3: The Unraveling. The next morning, the Ivanov family was in shock. Mikhail was dead, his body cold and stiff in the bed. The authorities were called, but they could find no explanation for his death. It was as if his life had simply been snuffed out, leaving no trace of what had happened. But the family knew better. They had seen the stain grow darker, more vivid, and they had felt the malevolent presence that lingered in the room. Fear began to take hold of them, and they realized that they were not alone in the apartment, that something evil was with them, hiding in the walls. That night, the stain pulsed again, and the hand returned. This time, it claimed the mother, Elena, its fingers tightening around her throat until her breath was gone. The children, now terrified beyond belief, barricaded themselves in their room, refusing to sleep, their eyes glued to the wall where the stain seemed to glow with an unholy light. They could hear the hand moving through the apartment, the soft rustle of fabric, as it passed through the walls, searching for its next victim. But the night passed without incident, and as dawn broke, the hand retreated, leaving the children shaken but alive. Desperate and terrified, they sought help from the village elders, who told them of the curse, a dark tale of a vengeful spirit that had been bound to the apartment long ago, a spirit that would not rest until it had claimed the lives of all who lived there. Chapter 4: The Final Stand. Knowing that they could not stay in the apartment, the children made plans to leave. But the curse had taken hold, and it would not let them go so easily. As night fell once again, the stain grew brighter, and the hand returned, more determined than ever to finish its work. The children huddled together in the corner of the room, clutching each other in fear as the hand emerged from the wall. It moved slowly this time, deliberately, as if savoring the moment. The air crackled with energy, and the children could feel the presence of the spirit, its anger and hatred filling the room. Just as the hand was about to strike, the door burst open, and an old man entered the room. He was a village elder, a man who had dealt with the supernatural before. He carried with him a talisman, an ancient charm said to have the power to banish evil spirits. With a shout, he held the talisman up to the hand, and a blinding light filled the room. The hand recoiled, its form flickering like a dying flame. The stain on the wall began to shrink, its color fading, until it was nothing more than a faint mark, barely visible in the dim light. The hand let out a final, anguished wail before disappearing into the wall, leaving the room in silence. The curse had been lifted, the spirit banished at last. Epilogue: The Haunting Echo. The Ivanov children survived, but they were forever changed by the horrors they had witnessed. They left the village, never to return, and the apartment was abandoned, left to rot and decay. But the legend of the Crimson Curse lived on. In the village, they still speak of the red stain, of the hand that emerges from the walls, seeking the living. And some say that, on certain nights, when the wind howls through the empty rooms, you can still hear the echoes of the hand, still searching, still hungry. For in the darkness, in the silence of the night, some curses never truly die. They merely wait, biding their time until the next unwary soul dares to cross their path. End of The Crimson Curse. Third story: The Silent Depths. Prologue. In the quiet coastal villages of Korea, where the sea whispers ancient secrets to those who dare to listen, there is a legend that sends chills down the spines of even the bravest souls. The villagers speak in hushed tones of the mulg wishing, ghosts of the drowned, doomed to haunt the waters that claimed their lives. These spirits, it is said, are forever searching for companionship in their eternal solitude, dragging the unwary to a watery grave. This is the story of one such spirit, whose tale of sorrow and vengeance has been passed down through generations. A chilling reminder of the dangers that lurk in the depths. Chapter 1: The Drowned Village. The village of Haebang was nestled on the shores of Jeju Island, a place where the sea was both a giver of life and a taker of souls. The villagers depended on the ocean for their livelihood, but they also knew to respect its power. They told stories of the mulg wishing, warning their children never to go near the water at night. It was said that long ago, a young woman named So-yun lived in the village. She was known for her beauty and kindness, but her life was marked by tragedy. One stormy night, So-yun's fiancé, a fisherman, was lost at sea. Grief-stricken, she wandered the shores, searching for any sign of him. Days turned into weeks, but there was no trace of his body. Unable to bear the pain, So-yun threw herself into the ocean, hoping to join her beloved in death. But the sea, it seemed, was not so merciful. Her body was never recovered, and soon after, strange things began to happen in the village. Fishermen spoke of seeing a pale figure in the water, her long hair flowing like seaweed, her eyes filled with sorrow and anger. Chapter 2, The First Victim. Years passed, and the story of So-yun became a cautionary tale, a ghost story to frighten children. But the mulg wishing was no mere story. It was very real, and it was only a matter of time before it struck again. One summer evening, a group of teenagers decided to swim in the sea under the light of the full moon. Among them was Ji-hoon, a boy known for his adventurous spirit. Ignoring the warnings of the village elders, he swam farther out into the water, laughing as his friends called for him to come back. As Ji-hoon swam, he felt something brush against his leg. At first, he thought it was just seaweed, but then he felt it again, stronger this time. He looked down, and his heart froze. A pale hand, cold and clammy, was wrapped around his ankle, pulling him down. He struggled, kicking and thrashing, but the hand's grip was unyielding. Panic set in as he was dragged under the water. His friends, hearing his screams, rushed to help, but by the time they reached him, it was too late. Ji-hoon's body was never found, and the villagers knew the mulg wishing had claimed another victim. Chapter 3, The Rising Fear. The death of Ji-hoon sent shockwaves through the village. The elders spoke of the curse, of how So-yun's spirit would not rest until she had taken enough souls to fill the void left by her lost love. The villagers became wary of the sea, avoiding it whenever they could. But the mulg wishing was not bound by the ocean alone. It could appear in any body of water, from rivers to lakes, and even in the bathtubs of unsuspecting victims. Soon, more people began to disappear. A fisherman, an elderly woman, a young child, all were taken by the mulg wishing. Each time, the water was the last place they were seen. The village was gripped by fear, and some even left their homes, hoping to escape the curse. But the mulg wishing's reach was long, and no one was safe. It was said that on stormy nights, when the wind howled and the waves crashed against the shore, you could hear So-yun's mournful cries carried on the wind, a sound that sent shivers down the spines of all who heard it. Chapter 4, The Final Confrontation. The villagers knew they had to act before the mulg wishing claimed more lives. They turned to the shaman, an old woman who had lived in the village for as long as anyone could remember. She was known for her knowledge of the supernatural, and the villagers hoped she could put an end to the curse. The shaman prepared a ritual to appease So-yun's spirit. It was a dangerous task, for the mulg wishing was driven by anger and sorrow, emotions that were not easily soothed. On the night of the ritual, the villagers gathered on the shore, their faces pale with fear. The shaman chanted ancient prayers, her voice rising above the sound of the waves. She called out to So-yun, begging her to find peace and let go of her anger. For a moment, the sea was still, and it seemed as though the ritual had worked. But then, from the depths of the ocean, So-yun's ghostly form emerged. Her eyes were filled with an unearthly light, her hair flowing like dark tendrils around her. The villagers gasped in terror as she approached the shaman, her expression a mixture of sadness and rage. The shaman held her ground, continuing to chant, but the mulg wishing was not swayed. With a scream that pierced the night, So-yun reached out, her long arms extending unnaturally, and grabbed the shaman, pulling her into the water. The villagers watched in horror as both disappeared beneath the waves, the water churning violently before finally calming. Epilogue: The Eternal Watch. The village of Haebang was never the same after that night. The shaman's sacrifice had seemingly appeased the mulg wishing, and no more deaths occurred. But the villagers knew the curse had not been fully lifted. The sea was still haunted, and on certain nights, when the moon was full and the wind was still, they could see a pale figure standing on the shore, watching, waiting. The legend of the mulg wishing continued to be told, a story of love, loss, and the unyielding grip of the past. The villagers knew that as long as the sea existed, so too would the mulg wishing, forever searching for those who dared to venture too close to the water's edge. For in the depths of the ocean, where the light never reaches, the spirits of the drowned wait, their hands outstretched, ready to pull the living into their cold embrace. End of The Silent Depths. The end.
Thanks for tuning in to our podcast. If you enjoyed our exploration of ghosts, mythical creatures, and urban legends, please share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling episodes. Until next time, my beloved listeners.